I asked the organizers why they would want me to moderate. I have absolutely no expertise in the art of Jewish culinary affairs. I have limited knowledge of Jewish history, etc., and I was surprised that they would ask me to moderate this. But the answer was very simple. They were concerned that the passions that this debate would arouse might cause great tension in the audience, and the police were worried about security matters. And given my background in corrections and my relationships with the police, I was asked to make sure that you behave and that everything goes according to Hoyle. The police were also very concerned about the topic of the debate. Think about it. What are we debating here? We're debating the poppy seed. The Colombian drug cartel is very concerned about those kinds of issues. And, we've had police intelligence has suggested that the cartel is following this debate very carefully, and we have the police surrounding the building, so you're safe. Don't worry. And think about it. The Latke. What is the Latke? Cartel. Again, OPEC is very concerned about what might be said about the relationship of the Latke to oil. So from a security point of view, I think we've got the grounds covered. Let me just say that this is an important debate, because it's not just a debate about the poppy versus the potato. It's a debate about life, life in general and Jewish life specifically. The potato has all kinds of symbolism, as does the poppy seed, and our speakers will explain those things to you. This is the 62nd year that this debate is being held. Anyways, we're going to start. We flipped a coin, and we decided that we would start with the poppy seed. So Gary Levine, please present your arguments.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking whatever committee, I assume it is the debating club, of Beth Tzedec, for having had the kindness to invite me to join you this morning. I have been informed that it is the intention of the committee to video this morning's debate, assumedly so that it can be placed in a vault, that vault sealed, its location obscured until all video playback technology has become obsolete. Something like hanging the picture in the gallery because the artist is unavailable. It builds. Should it happen, however, that someone should stumble upon this video and that he or she should be watching it now, let me only point out that this video is being filmed with a wide-angle lens, which, as you know, adds some 70 or 80 kilos to my appearance, somewhat cloaking my lithe slimness, only some 2 or 3 kilos short of bulimia poster boy of the month, what they can do these days with technology. That behind us, let me say what a pleasure it is for me to be here this morning. First, because I have the opportunity to share a podium with my dear friend Susan Jackson. Over the course of the last 20 years or so, since Susan was about 3, I have worked for and with Susan in a variety of programs and projects in the service of Jewish education across the province. She is without question among the most creative, dedicated Jewish educators I know, and it is always a pleasure to have the opportunity to see her. And with that introduction to Susan, we have now spent the majority of the morning introducing Susan. I realize, of course, that there is ultimately very little chance of me being in any way successful in this morning's debate. That is not simply because Susan is intelligent, witty, funny, and brimming with more anecdotes than a pot of soup boiling over on the stove. No, it is because Susan simply knows everyone. I don't just mean everyone here, or everyone in Toronto, or everyone in Canada. Susan knows everyone. When she lands at Tel Aviv airport, the customs agent line up to see her. The last time the Israeli Prime Minister landed in Ottawa, his itinerary read, lunch with Susan, see if there's time for Sussex Drive. Susan may be the exception that proves the rule that you can't really be Jewish if there isn't at least one person who hates you. And Maurice Zabar is here. It is also a great pleasure for me. Maurice is an important person to know, as we have already heard, that among other aspects of his long career in public service, Maurice spent a number of years in the Canadian penal system on the administrative side of the cell doors. Aside from the understanding which this has provided him in the psychology of working with people who are convinced of their own invulnerability. It also allows him access to some quite restrictive knowledge of where some very important keys are kept. This has made him a very rather valuable friend to have in certain circles. My understanding is that he has received 3 phone calls alone this week, and that is just from OJ. And Epi. We are all very honored that a man of Epi's position and personal achievement should be gracing us this morning. Time precludes me listing all before you, or all or even some of Epi's many honored credentials. In his current position of Executive Director of the Center for the Enhancement of Jewish Education and Senior Vice President of the UJA Federation of Greater Toronto, he makes decisions which affect the future of Jewish education in our city, and is next in line to debate Sarah Palin on Saturday Night Live if she's ever stupid enough to try that again. We look forward to Epi's continuing growth and achievement and express our sincere hope that one day he will have earned for himself a grown-up name like any other young man over the age of 7. I asked someone for a cup of coffee. They got halfway there. But mostly, honored ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to be here because I am with you, members of the community of the Beth Tzedec congregation. How shall I say this without sounding elitist? You are, ladies and gentlemen, people of some sophistication, people of some culture. On this morning, when we are going to talk about ethnic foods, there is a certain relief for me in knowing that I do not have to explain to my audience why it is that scrunching down in front of the campfire to consume a mess o' beans cooked in the can, washed down by burned coffee grounds, boiled in swamp water and poured into styrofoam is not an example of haute cuisine. I do not mean to say there is anything wrong with it, only that it is several steps shy of cordon bleu. It is possible, ladies and gentlemen, to be aware of and even appreciative of ethnic foods without turning them into the apex of cultural achievement. We can, if you will, wear our Argyle socks with pride and happiness without claiming that they should have been chosen as the flag of the United Nations. And this then brings us to the Latka. There is nothing wrong with the Latka. It is just fine. The history of the Latka is well documented. The Jews of Eastern Europe were poor, oppressed, forbidden to own land. They wished on the holiday of Hanukkah to celebrate the miracle of the oil by utilizing oil in their cooking. They took what they had available and fried it, boiled it, incinerated it, and served it up for dinner. And what did they have available? The potato. I assure you that they did not choose the potato over an available goose pâté or chicken pot pie. It was what there was. It was cheap. It was available. It could be cooked in oil. It was not in any way sophisticated. The choices in recipe that they had then dealt less with the ingredients than with the processing, which is to say that it wasn't a question of whether or not potato. The question was how to squash the potato. A hammer, a rock, a really stale loaf of bread, perhaps a bigger potato. Some ritual practices may have developed as part of the potato squashing. Perhaps something political like, we should only do this to the Tsar, the dirty bastard. Or perhaps something religious, oh Lord, may thy enemies be as squashed as this potato. Or whatever. And then they ate it. It was very nice. Sometimes it was crispier, sometimes a little more flexible. Sometimes you wrung the oil out of it like water from a bath towel. Fine. Somewhere along the line, someone hit upon the idea of squashing an apple while you were at it, and putting the apple squash on top of the potato squash, so that you had, in effect, a 2-course meal. In short, they made the best of a limited situation, and well done, say I. I appreciate their perseverance, their dedication to their tradition, and the success they enjoyed in their limited way in memorializing the oil of Hanukkah. One can only express one's gratitude that there was, in Eastern Europe at the time, a greater availability of potatoes than of radishes. It was let it grow, radishes, funny, very good. It was an ethnic food. We are not the only people to use ethnic foods. Every ethnicity has some primal, dare I say primitive, food tradition somewhere in its background. And once a year or so, they trot it out and wave it in front of the masses. More, it would seem to me, to say, this is where I came from, than this is who I am. The Scottish, for instance, have the haggis. It is hard to say much that is praiseworthy about the haggis. It is the stomach of the sheep, in which some of the contents have been mercifully removed, and others, like the liver, the heart, and other squishy things, have less mercifully been inserted. The whole thing is then boiled or cooked or baked until it resembles an oversized football or a misshapen goiter. Someone will then make guttural noises, ah, ah, and recite something or another by Robert Burns, Scots were how we're Wallace blood. The haggis will then be broken open, steaming platefuls will be distributed, people will smile and grunt Celtically. And I swear to you that no one will eat a bite of the thing. It would be like eating a pinata prepared by Sweeney Todd. No one is going to touch it. And, well, what can I tell you? I'm pleased. Thank you very much for joining in this morning's public pronouncements and group therapy. No one will touch it, and I needn't mention among friends that it is not in the nature of Scotsmen to waste anything. Nor are latkes our only ethnic food. I will leave aside for a moment the discussion of gefilte fish, which, like most ethnic foods, is a dish whose exact ingredients are purposely obscured. But let us talk for a minute about kishka. We begin with the intestines of some animal or another, hopefully already dead. We remove as much as possible of what tends to be found in intestines, stuff in other parts of the animal that should not show up on a plate by themselves, add matzo meal and chicken fat, the mother's milk of Jewish cooking, bake it, boil it, grill it, burn it, and serve it with a side dish of, yes, potatoes. You might not think of wine as a specifically Jewish food, and you'll be right, of course, except that I am referring to the Pesach Sidarim of my youth, and the Manischewitz syrup malaga, which filled our 4 cups. It was an interesting wine, vintage, second week of February. It poured out of the bottle like Heinz ketchup. After 2 cups, the younger children were vomiting on the carpet, and at least 2 or 3 of the older women had forgotten what it was that had kept them from lucrative careers in exotic dance. We never actually finished the Seder. I don't recall ever having drunk a 4th cup or having sung Chad Gadya. In the morning we could be found moaning in pain across the dining room and living room floors, posed like a tableau of the Battle of Gettysburg. The rest of the holiday would be spent in recuperation and in taking the younger children to doctors to be treated for juvenile diabetes. And about Pichah, there is nothing I can say. I remember as a youth watching it quiver, gelatinous with green flecks. Long it seemed to me as a football field, cut into squares which oozed together like the nostrils of a 4-year-old boy with a cold. Jewish jello, someone said to me and smiled. What is it? I said, calves' feet. He said, and he reached out for a piece which flowed up his arm and onto his shirt cuff. I thought never to see the thing again, and I did manage to avoid it for more than 30 years until the sliming scene in Ghostbusters, which you liked also, I'm sure. So, ladies and gentlemen, ethnic food exists. We know that. We accept it. Certainly let us have a latke. But let us not delude ourselves into thinking that we are Prometheus, having stolen fire from the gods and brought it to warm the earth. It is a latke. Eat 1, eat 2, but we are really not going to join a touring company of Fiddler on the Roof, are we? The very name latke. Listen to it. The imprecision. The word flows off into an indistinct vowel, as though we cannot decide where to end it. Latke. Your grandfather brings you a plate, his face not 4 inches from the food, and he offers you latke. Are you going to eat it? My God, you don't know where it's been. And then he says, wait, Sadie will be along in a minute, she'll slobber on some sour cream. Well, thank you very much. Latka. I mean, pronounce the word the way it is spelled. L-A-T-K-E, Latke. Latke. Yes, I know no one pronounces it that way. No one pronounces it that way because it is an ethnic food. It is supposed to be imprecise. It is supposed to come together as an outgrowth of the culture of the common man, organically, almost magically, not designed, but an outgrowth of the flow of history, like the Crimean War or rap music. It is the food of our history, the food of the common man, the food of our struggle. It is a food of who we were when we were not what we are now. I will put that out in a booklet later on. A cultural oddity, a gastronomic anachronism. Valid enough for occasional reference, but embarrassing as an object of weepy nostalgia, like Dad's first hamburger of the season. Burned on the outside, still bloody on the inside, but you have to smile when you take it and eat it as though you enjoyed it because he has spent the better part of $2,000 on the barbecue that is supposed to clean itself, adjust its own flames, and tell the future. Now, let us look to the Hamentash. Hamentash, the name, clear, precise, ending in a soft but definitive consonant phoneme. Hamentash. None of the squash and burn about Hamentash. Here we can look for recipes. Open up your Jewish food guides to latkes and you get potato, squash with heavy object, boil in oil, drain, somehow, eat. But with Hamentash we have baking, we have choices. Cake dough, cookie dough, yeast dough, fillings of jam, fillings of jelly, fillings of fruit, fillings of seeds, fillings of candy, and design choices. 3 corners, yes, but straight edge, scalloped edge, tucked over, tucked under, covered like a pie, open like a pastry. This is a food. This is not something from a cave drawing that I need to explain as part of an ancient tradition passed on by people who lived before God created the food processor. This is not something I need to compare with the sheep gut of another ancient tribe. This is a Hamentash. It is not less delicate nor less subtle than any French pastry. Let some English scone try to stand up to it, I say. Some German pretzel drowning in mustard. Hamentash, precise, designed, the triumphant realization of generations of culinary artistry, not simply the de facto result of having beaten a potato into submission unawares. There are historical reasons for the development of the Hamentash as there were for the Latka. The Jews of Shushan, the story of Purim, had defeated their oppressors. Mordechai and Esther were at the top of the social pyramid, not only of the Jewish world, but of the whole of the Persian Empire. Success was to be measured in ways that had social significance far beyond the small family group or the shtetl street party. There was affluence that permitted choice, that permitted innovation and experimentation. We had defeated our enemy, Haman, and we mocked him by designing a pastry based on his 3-cornered hat, or in Israel where it is called Oznei Haman, his 3 ears. I don't understand that either, except to say that Israelis can be strange sometimes. We make his hat and we eat it up. Ha ha, we say. So much for you, Haman, and threatening to destroy us. We win, you lose, we eat your hat. Ha ha. Can't we win something once? Does every day on the Jewish calendar have to be some variation of Tisha B'Av? Need we be ashamed that we won? Need we apologize for the fact that we could afford flour, sugar, eggs, jellies, jam? I'm sorry, it tastes so good, but they ran out of radishes at the food bank. Shall we not allow ourselves the simple pleasures that come with not being oppressed? Have we become so invested in Jewish suffering that we can identify ourselves only with indigence and insufficiency? Yes, it was a lovely wedding. The bride was beautiful, but she will get old and wrinkled in time. There is no shame in having gone through difficult times, but neither is there shame in going through times which are not so difficult. All of that stuff about the evils of solvency, easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, that's not ours. That's not Jewish, that's the New Testament. That's the other fellows. It is just fine in Jewish tradition to have enough to eat, to be able to buy nice clothes, to live in a comfortable home. It's not a violation of Jewish tradition and culture to win something occasionally. It is lovely to make a beautiful pastry, tender, fragrant, pleasant to the touch, glorious to the taste. It is wonderful to laugh and to bask in some moments of pleasure that are more than an instant or two stolen away from lives of oppression. Enough, then, of this servile slobbering over trans fats and squashed spuds. Let us rejoice in the sophistication and subtle grandeur of the Jewish Hamentash. This is not hedonism. It is a simple appreciation of the goodness with which God has blessed us. Ecclesiastes says, "Who then should eat and drink and enjoy my labor more than me?" Have we not earned this little piece of cake, my friends? As the poet once said, one may maximize one's notion on a plate of Hamentash, but a Latke. Thank you.
I'm speechless. It's amazing how good anything sounds if you use an English accent. We have seen a systematic destruction and abuse of the Latka, and it's time now to ask Susan Jackson to come up here and defend the Latka. So Susan, please.
It was lovely. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not going to reintroduce everybody. It's lovely to be with Gary. It always is. Morris and Epi. But this is a debate. Resolved. Unresolved. Why the Latka? My thesis is nurture and nature, genetics and history. But what I want to do today is start with a real-life, true story that happened here in Toronto, to give us a framework for the importance of the potato Latka. While I will, in fact, in small ways demolish the importance of the Hamentash as we go through this, it is more important to me, especially after listening to my colleague, Professor Levine, to tell you the importance to the Jewish people of the Latka. 24 years ago, in November, I received a call at home from a man named Herb. He said, "Hello, Susan, my name is Herb. I'm the president of the Toronto Jewish Gastronomic Society." I said, "You're who?" He said, "I'm the president of the Toronto Jewish Gastronomic Society." I said, "What do you do, eat?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "We come together for all the chagim, for all the holidays. We eat the foods of the holidays, and we bring a speaker." I figure it's November. Hanukkah is coming. Syrian, Greek, blood, guts, that's an easy one. He said, "Will you come?" I said, "Yes." I learned a very important lesson. Never say yes to a speaking engagement unless you know the topic. He asked me to speak on the cultural and historical significance of the potato Latka. Well, let me tell you, I now know more about the Latka than anybody sitting on this revered panel. I went to his house because I wanted to know who were the food Jews. I arrived and there were 40 families in his home. There were over 100 children running around his basement. And I wanted to know, who are the food Jews? And I did what apparently every speaker did. I put the story of Hanukkah in there while I was at it. And of course, I was very curious as to who these people were. When I finished, I asked them a number of questions. I said, "Well, I don't understand who you are. It's an esoteric so tell me, for Rosh Hashanah, what did you do?" Said, "Oh, a man came with a beehive and showed us how to make honey." Cute, honey and apples. I said, "What did you do for Yom Kippur?" He said, "We broke fast together." I said, "Okay, so what do you do between Hanukkah and Purim?" There's not really much, just Tu B'Shvat, a couple of nuts. It's not so exciting. And he said, once a year, we do Shabbat. I said, And 9 months ago, last Shabbos, what did you do? He said, a man came and made for us 8 kinds of cholent. Now, if you have ever had one kind of cholent, a stew which cooks for 24 hours with enough beans to blow Beth Tzedec into Lake Ontario, you are aware that 8 kinds of cholent could kill a person. And I still don't know who are the food Jews. So I asked the president's wife, and she said, "You know, we were from totally assimilated homes. Really, we were Jewish. We knew that because our mothers mentioned it to us. We really knew nothing about Judaism, and that was fine. We grew up together, this woman and I. We went away to school together. We accidentally married Jewish boys. It wasn't on purpose. And everything was fine until we had children, not accidentally. And being Jewish, we realized something was missing, but we didn't know what. And I looked at my friend and I said, once a year, we used to go to my Bubby for Latkas. And that's the way we found our way back to the Jewish world. So the Latka is a very important component of Jewish life. It is the continuity of Jewish existence today, and it brings us back to who we are. There are 3 genes that have been identified in the Jewish body: the guilt gene, the carbohydrate gene, and the cholesterol gene. All of these physical substances can be found in the potato latke. Guilt when we eat it, carbohydrates in the potato, and of course, the brilliant oil which provides us our cholesterol. Nature and history are on our side. And it's nice to talk about the intelligentsia, and it's nice to talk about Danish that are very fancy, but I want to give my children memories, tradition, and Jewish values. That, ladies and gentlemen, comes from the Latka. It is also diverse and multicultural like we are. He talked about squashing potatoes and squashing potatoes. You can squash a zucchini. You can squash a carrot. And today we put fancy things in there. I know someone who cooks latkes with cumin. You can make them as hoity-toity as you want, but they are still the soul of the Jewish people. Too often people tell us that the latke is the poor relation. But I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that the potato latke has saved us many, many times. You can travel all over the world, and for 8 days you smell the oil cooking. For 8 days we walk around crepsing. For 8 days we're sprayed on our back, we can't breathe, we had too many latkes. 8, not 1, 8 days. Food is important to the Jewish people. Heavy food is important to the Jewish people. It is like the American who went to England. And he went into a gourmet food shop and he looked and he said, "May I please have 12 blintzes?" And the man said, "No, no, no. We don't have blintzes here. Those are crepes." He said, "Fine, I'll take 12 crepes. Do you have lox?" "No, no, no." He says, "We have smoked salmon, sir." Says, "Fine, I'll have a pound of smoked salmon. How about those latkes? Can I have a dozen latkes?" "No, sir, those are not latkes. Those are potato pancakes." Said, "Fine, I'll have a dozen. And could you deliver them to my hotel on Saturday?" "No, sir, we don't deliver the chazarai on Shabbos." Well, you know, it's the same wherever you go. It doesn't matter if you sound like this or you sound like that. It's still the chazarai doesn't get delivered on Shabbos. We may make them differently, but in the end, they're all the same. And the latke is related, as we know, to an actual miracle. The miracle of the oil in the temple. Purim was looking for a symbol. What are they going to give you? A naket tomato? They had to find something. So they found a hat. Not even an attractive hat. Not even a hat with a feather. A hat, as he says, like this, like that. It's a hat. And the tradition goes on. The famous Raphael Finkel, in his article, Ritual Slaughter of the Latke, says, "Remember to salt the potato and leave it to drain for at least 24 hours. We do this in memory of Lot's wife, Latka, who was turned to salt. Use a lot of salt in memory of Lot's daughter, Latta." There's a history, I didn't say it, Raphael Finkel said it. There's a history to the Latka that we cannot forget. And we must not forget that the Latka has saved our lives many times. Because the Latka, that carbohydrate and that cholesterol, in times of famine, we all know from our diets, from Nutrisystem and Weight Watchers, that carbohydrates and cholesterol digest slowly. And in Jewish times of famine, we survived because of the Latka. Now, I don't want to attack the Hamentash. And Morris already alluded to it. But if I'm teaching values, memory, and history to my children, I have a problem teaching the Hamentash, because 50% of the time it is filled with the poppy seed. The poppy seed and all of its other offshoots are controlled by the drug dealers of the world. And we know that those drug dealers support and fund terrorism today in the world. My other problem, I must tell you, is the concept of image. I have a problem with a tradition whose biggest taiva is prunes. do I promote prunes? How do I make my children eat prunes? How do I deal with my children who've eaten too many prunes? Hamentash. A very, very large problem. So let me end with what Wikipedia says. Latkes, a potato pancake-like structure, not to be confused with the house of pancakes, and nothing that they would put out. In a latke, the oil is in the pancake. It's made with potatoes, onion, eggs, and matzah meal. Latkes can be eaten with applesauce, but never maple syrup. There is a rumor that in the time of the Maccabees, they lit a latke by mistake. And it burned for 8 days. What is certain, I will tell you, when you have your latke, you will burn for 8 days. And this is good.
You know, in my preparations for this discussion, and I have a relatively minor role, I read all of the speeches over the last 62 years in this debate, and never in the 62 years have we had such erudite speakers who have made such incredibly strong cases for their relative arguments.